Well, welcome back to part 3 of our vocal masterclass about the church vocalist. We hope you've been enjoying yourself thus far and finding this information helpful and applicable in your church context. So we have chatted about how we can personally improve our voices. We've talked about warming up, how we can facilitate an effective sound check. But now we are actually, let's get into the rehearsal and the service itself.
Okay.
So first off, there are a numerous amount of roles that can be assumed when we refer to the church vocalist. You could find that you are a worship leader, a frontline vocalist or a background vocalist, a choir member, a choir conductor, or a vocal director. But whatever role you get to serve in at your church, know that each is so valuable and plays a significant part in the worship set and encouragement of the congregation's experience. So Dee, you've actually been a faithful member of our team for over 20 years and have been a vocal leader in our team for just as long. So what are some of your expectations of a vocalist here at Hillsong Church or of any church vocalist?
Okay, so for me, when it comes to being a frontline vocalist or even in the choir, I expect you to help the church to sing.
Love that.
Okay? Sometimes we can get so caught up in our own thing that we forget, there's a whole congregation out there that we need to engage with, that we need to make eye contact with, you need to smile at, basically you need to keep gathering the church as we go along. I want to specifically speak to those that are in choir, because I feel that you underestimate.
Speak to the choir members. I got a special place in my heart for choir.
You underestimate the part that you play. Yeah. Because when you think about it, you're the biggest group on stage.
Absolutely. Right? And the choir is the representation of the congregation.
Of the church, correct. So what you don't realize is whenever the camera goes to you, people will mimic what they see on the screen.
Yeah.
Right? Not only that, the choir is so important, like for us as a church and in terms of our mixes, because that's the predominant mix in terms of vocals that goes out through the sound system. So when the church hear voices, automatically they will join in.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what we want.
100%. Yep. That's what we're here to do.
Yep, pretty much.
Oh, I love that. So shout out to any choir member. You are valuable and you are leading the church just as much as anybody else.
Yep.
And we absolutely, as you can tell, we're big choir fans. Okay, so let's talk about the actual rehearsal itself.
Yep.
So here at Hillsong Church, we try to rehearse twice for a service if we can. So once on a Thursday night after our team night, and then again on a Sunday. So for a strong rehearsal, there are a few things that we think that you should be looking out for and keeping in mind. So the first thing is to keep the melody strong. The second thing is that your phrasing is clean and together, and this is also going to contribute to your blend. And then the third is that your harmonies are in sync and tight. So Dee, we are going to break down some of these 3 points because they're big chunks.
Yep.
So first off, let's start with that the melody is strong.
Yep.
Why? Why does the melody need to be strong? Is it really so bad to sing in 3-part harmony for everything? From the top, let's just hit them with the 3 parts.
Yep. Okay. So we want to keep the melody strong. Number 1, to honor the songwriters.
Yeah.
That's always a good thing.
Those guys.
Right?
What are you talking about?
It's always a good thing. And I think of it as conversation.
Yeah, okay.
Right? When you meet someone for the first time, do you tell them everything? Or is it, hi, how are you? My name is such and such. So for me, it's like that. The melody, then add another harmony, then add another layer. It's conversation with the congregation.
I have actually never heard that before.
I know.
I've known you for a long time.
I know.
I just really love that.
You know what? This is one of those hidden things, so I think I'll share it with everyone.
Oh my gosh. We call her the Queen Dee. We also call her the Angel. She's a secret angel. I love that. It's a conversation.
Conversation. You're telling people about Jesus.
Oh my goodness gracious in heaven. Okay.
That is goodness.
If you
don't get us started.
Write it down. Yeah. We're going to start. We're going to take everybody to church.
Come on.
Okay, so the second, I'm going to move on.
Yep.
But the second thing is that, is to focus on phrasing. So making sure that your phrasing is clean and together.
Yep.
So polished phrasing will actually contribute to a more unified sound and will also contribute to your blend. So Dee, when we say to be mindful of your phrasing, what does that mean exactly? And what are some practical ways that people can improve their phrasing if that's something that they might struggle with?
Okay, so with phrasing in particular, it's cutoffs.
Yep.
Okay. So at the moment, I'm working with a few of the singers and encouraging them to taper things off, right, rather than abrupt endings. Okay, I think that has a more stylistically, it's nicer, and even on the ears, it's pretty good. I think phrasing contributes so much to blending, because you're in sync with one another, okay? And again, I'll reiterate this. We're here to help the church sing.
Yes.
So that's one of the key reasons for me when it comes to blending. I'm like, God is not the author of confusion, so let's not confuse the church.
Yeah. Again, just dropping a gold over here. Course. Okay, so let's keep talking about that from a blending perspective, because that's what you just spoke about.
Yep.
So let's just say, how do you actually blend with someone, say, that has a completely different singing style than yours? Is it possible?
Yeah.
Can you, because say you have an R&B voice, but then someone else on your team has a very folk kind of sound. Okay. Can you blend with them? How do you blend with them? Like, what are the things that you're keeping in mind in order to blend with another person on your team? Okay,
so maybe this sort of thing can be done like while you're doing warm-ups and stuff, but pair two people together.
Okay.
Okay. Say, for example, if I was to pair with you with Michelle.
We have very different singing voices.
Yeah, I'd say mimic Michelle. And then vice versa. Michelle, mimic Shekeinah. And what you'll find is that you're listening like more intently, and the blend will start to happen. So when your singers get on the platform, they should actually have a mix of all the singers in their ears.
I'm going to need you to say that one more time.
All vocalists, frontline vocalists, if you're an in-ears, you should actually have the mix of every single vocalist in your ears, because that's going to help with the blending.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. We are not silos here.
No.
You can't just have yourself and the worship leaders and think that that's good enough, because that's not contributing to the unified sound, and that's what we're there.
Yep. And sometimes when I worship lead, I love having the mix of all the vocals in there, because it helps me as I'm leading. So that's key. Vocals in your ears. The vocal mix in your ears is key.
I'm an extrovert as well, so I hate feeling so alone. It'll literally be my comment to the monitor engineer of just going, I feel really alone right now. Is there any way that you can just put more vocals in my ears so I don't feel so alone?
Good point, Shekeinah. Good point.
For the extroverts.
Thank you.
For all the introverts are like, no thanks. Okay, so the last thing in regards to what we were talking about from a rehearsal, things to just keep in mind so that you can have a really effective rehearsal, is to make sure that your harmonies are in sync and that they're tight. So Dee, there are probably a lot of people who are watching this who genuinely struggle with harmonies, full stop, let alone making them in sync and tight. So how can people improve their ear to actually hear harmonies?
Okay. Again, lots of great resource on YouTube. Okay, that Singing Success channel that I told you about, they have some really, really helpful tips there. The big thing is learning to listen, okay, listening to other notes. And sometimes what you'll find is when people know their harmonies, when they start to sing with another person, they don't stick to it. They kind of follow the other person. A big tip is just put one finger in your ear so that you can hear yourself, and sometimes it's almost like you've got to try really hard to hear your note within the chord. That helps a lot so that you can follow that. And when you're listening to a piece of music, I like to listen, say, for example, like, you've got lots of harmonies in there. Just try to follow that one voice all the way through. That helps as well.
And if you want to get really basic as well, listen to music that actually has a lot of harmonies.
Yeah.
Because if you're listening to something that is just one singer the entire time, or they've purposely buried the harmonies, yep. That's going to make it more difficult for you to learn because you're kind of starting from scratch. So so gospel music, a lot of harmonies. So that's a great starting point where they have them really evenly mixed. Yep. And so I would just say, change up. You might have to change up your style of music.
Change it up. Listen to choirs.
Absolutely.
A lot of choirs that are out there. Kingdom Choir from London. Yep. They do some really, really great contemporary worship stuff with harmonies. Amazing. So have a listen to them. There's a whole bunch out there. Brooklyn Tabernacle, all that. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. Okay, so at this point in time, we've done all the necessary things that we need to do. We've planned personally and practically. We've rehearsed as a group. And now it is service time. It's game time. So there are 3 major considerations that we encourage all vocalists to keep in mind when it comes to our role in a church service. So the first consideration is we are a supporting role in the bigger picture of what is happening from a church perspective, but we need to remember that we are still there to help lead people. Yeah. And we've said it heaps in this masterclass, but we get to play one part in the massive unit that is there to encourage the congregation into worship and to lead them into that intimate place with Jesus. Yeah. So whatever role and capacity you find yourself serving in for a church service, remember that, yes, it is a supporting role, but you are there to help lead people. So you need to take personal responsibility on what you've been given to steward. Yeah. So Dee, what would you say, what does taking personal responsibility for the service look like to you?
Okay, for me, honestly, it's just as important as what the speaker on that particular day might put into it, you know. I love to just stay prayerful throughout the week, learn the songs, you know, make sure you know what the melody is. If there are parts there, you know, make sure you know what they are. I try to learn the lyrics, you know, so I thank God for graphics.
Yes,
you know?
Every lyrics operator, you are also a part of our team and you are a valuable member.
So for me, that's what I do. But what is a key thing for me is I am there to help create a safe place for his church. And that's, you know, so the responsibility that I have, just think about this, the anointing that is on the house, the anointing that is on our senior pastors, we help to carry that.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. I love it. Okay. So the next thing that we actually need to be aware of during the service is actually what's happening musically. So we actually need to be mindful that we don't get so occupied in what we're doing that we forget what we've rehearsed and that and what may currently be happening musically kind of just goes out the window and we're fully oblivious to it. So realistically, something might change from how you rehearsed it, or someone else on platform may change tact, which means that you need to adjust. So rehearsals are vital, but the purpose of a rehearsal isn't to lock you into an immovable plan. The purpose of a rehearsal is actually to enable flexibility in the actual service, where you can then come alongside to support the worship leader, your senior pastor, or the congregation. So, Dee, what factors musically would you say that we need to remain mindful of during a service so that we can stay as supportive as possible?
A big thing is dynamics. Okay. So listen.
How so?
Well, for example, when, you know, like when they're in, say it's quite, musically, it's not as loud. It's a sweeter sound, a lower sound. You don't want to be singing too harshly. You don't want to be singing too hard. Yeah. And then vice versa, when it does build, like engage with that dynamically, what's happening, and really go for it. Yeah. You know, there are points there. You got to watch, because it's the same thing as driving, you know. Am I going to turn left? Am I turning right? Am I going straight ahead? Okay. You got to watch. You got to listen. Okay. For those that are not on in-ears, always watch your music director, always, to see where you're heading. And because we don't want to drop the moments, so to speak. Yeah. something that's whether it be transitions, you know, coming out of like when the MC comes up and he wants us to go back into the song, always be ready.
Okay, love that. Okay, so as we conclude, the final element that we need to be aware of during a service is probably the most important of all. We need to be aware of the room. We need to be aware of how the congregation are responding, and we need to be aware of what the Holy Spirit is doing. We need to be aware of where our leadership wants to go, and the reason we need to be aware of those things is because our job is to serve the greater purpose of the service. We can't do that if we're in our own worship world. The moment that you accept a roster, you're saying yes to putting what you want to the side and putting the congregation and their needs first. When you click accept, you're saying yes to leading. You're saying yes to being on the front line and petitioning heaven on behalf of those around you. So Dee, how have you actually grown in your awareness of what's going on in the room and your ability to respond appropriately to it?
Do you know what? It all started for me back when I was in choir, 20-something years ago, when I was standing back row, but I'd be watching the congregation. I'd watch the conductor, you know, make sure I know where I'm going, but I'd be looking, scanning the room, and like looking out for people who you could tell sometimes they didn't want to be there, or were like visually you could tell they had had a hard week. So for me, that's when I started to really learn how to read the room. And I feel like it's something, when I do get the chance to lead now, like I find that it's almost like it's just an instinct thing. Instinctively, I'm like, yeah, that person. And what I'll do is I'll actually just start to sing over them, like particularly pinpoint that person and just start to sing over them, or even in the free worship moments. You know, for me, it's about drawing out the sound that is inside, because the shout comes from within.
Come on. I love that. And I think on that note, thank you so much for being with us. We so appreciate it. We hope that you've actually enjoyed this vocal masterclass. And it actually is our prayer that you feel more equipped as a vocalist to go and do what God has called you to do, which is lead his people through song. So we love you, vocalists. We are praying for you. And we hope you enjoyed this. We will see you again soon.